So you clicked on this video because you want to know how blind solving works, but you don't actually want to learn. Well, this is the video for you. Let's begin. Imagine a two-dimensional example of 4 different colored squares. This is the starting example. I've arranged them in logical order to make the memorization process easier. Red, orange, yellow, green. Now let's scramble them. Now that that's done, I'll assign the first space to be something we call a buffer. Think of it like juggling. If a ball needs to get from one hand to the other, it spends some time in the air above the other 2 balls. That space in the air is what we call the buffer space. Right now, the yellow needs to be swapped with the orange, so let's do that. Then orange to green, then green to red. Memorizing the order of the colors might be hard when there are only 6 colors on a Rubik's Cube, and yet 21 spaces we have to tackle on a 3x3. So let's see how we can make this easier. Notice how I've assigned each space a letter. This is the original scramble. Now, how did I come up with this? Well, if you see, we started with yellow, and yellow has to go to the orange space, otherwise known as the C space. Whatever's in the C space, this orange, has to go in the B space. Whatever's in the B space, this green, has to go into the red space, or the D space. So now we have C, B, D. And what space does the red have to go to? A. Now, remember how we were swapping with the buffer space at all times. Now, if the red is already in the buffer space, that means we don't have to do any more swaps. But for the sake of the example, I've given you C, B, D, A, which indicates that there are 4 swaps that need to be taking place, even though the last swap is technically null and void, because the A spot is already in the buffer space. So really, we only need 3 swaps here. Instead of trying to memorize where every individual space goes, we use something called a mnemonic strategy, where we assign a letter to each space on the cube, and then create a story to help us memorize it. This is the diagram showing the assignment of letters to spaces on the cube. When solving blindfolded, we split it up into corners and edges and tackle them both individually. So let's say that this space is my buffer space, and let's say that this green and orange edge is over here with the green edge on this B space. Well, we know this green edge needs to go here because this evidently is the green and orange space. And to do that, we are going to have to swap the L, this L piece, with this right here. So whatever is here has to go here. And whatever space, whatever edge is here will now end up in the buffer space. And we swap that with whatever other edge needs to be swapped in order for the piece right here to go wherever it needs to be. I'll show you a real-life example so it isn't as confusing. Alright, I'm going to try to replicate what I talked about earlier. So here we have the green and orange edge like I was talking about, and it needs to go into this L space right here. And this orange and white edge needs to go right here into the D space. So now we have L and D. The word I'm going to be using is lard because that's easier to remember. So lard, L and D. So first we put it into the L space, use the edge swapping algorithm. Now this edge is solved, and now we have to swap this, whatever's in the buffer space, with the D space right here, in the D space. So we use the same algorithm again. And then the cube is solved. So yeah, it's really just about creating a mnemonic, creating a story. That's honestly the hardest part of blind solving. There's nothing to do with math. There's nothing to do with being Asian, as some commenters might have you believe. Yeah. Peace. Subscribe for more so